going on, everybody? Jonathan here with my good friend and colleague Dave. And so, one of the things that Dave wanted to come on and ask about was working capital lines. The reason these always come up is because a lot of times when people are being solicited for financing for their business, this is what most people are being solicited for. Now, this is a program we have, it works great. It works with all credit scores. It's very flexible. And as long as you're using it for the right reasons, it makes a lot of sense. Meaning, if you're using it to grow and expand the business, if you're using it for short term needs, if you're using it because you need financing right away, it's a great program. It works with all credit types, and the qualifications are much lower than your traditional types of financing. So, what does that mean? What do I mean by that? Well, as long as you have a 500 score or above, and you're doing $15,000 a month in revenue or more going into a business bank account, right, with decent cash flow, you can qualify. And usually these get done really quick. I mean, 24 to 48 hours completely done. Now, they're usually 6 to 18 months, and it's either usually a Monday through Friday micro payment or a weekly payment. All right, but these are a little bit more expensive. So, what people don't understand is there's different types, right? And this is why they get a bad rap. There's some really expensive ones. There's some that are very, very cheap compared to the traditional ones, right? Now, why do people use them? Because they have the ability to take advantage of an opportunity quickly. They need the funds quickly. Or because they're having a situation with their credit, and this is the only type of financing they can get approved for. Now, Dave, was anything that I said, do you have any questions about what we just went over there?
No.
All right, cool. And listen, they're revenue based. What revenue based means is, you'll get a percentage of the revenue, typically 100% of the monthly average, right? So if somebody's averaging about 250,000, that's what they should expect to get. The other thing with these types of programs, they can also be very large too. I mean, I've done some at like $2 to $3 million because it's a large business. They had an opportunity to expand quickly, and they needed financing. This also works for harder to finance industries like cannabis, CBD, some of the industries that aren't typically approved for a line of credit or for SBA loans, right? Like bail bonds and things of that nature. So, Dave, what questions do you have on this program?
One of them is the difference between a line of credit and a working capital.
Cool. So a line of credit versus a working capital line is simple. A line of credit's 99% of the time is going to be cheaper. It's going to have a little bit more flexibility. A line of credit will go out 6 to 24 months, and that line of credit is usually either going to be a weekly payment structure or a monthly payment structure. The other difference is, let's say you take a working capital line for 100,000. That means every penny of that 100,000 or that full 100,000 is going into your bank account. As opposed to you get approved for a line of credit, and the line of credit is 100,000. Somebody can simply draw as little as, let's say, $10,000, and then they have access to the rest.
Yeah.
So just because you're approved for a line of credit of 100 or 200,000 doesn't mean you have to take it. You have access to that when you need it. Versus working capital, if you take a working capital line, you're going to take that full amount, and that's going to be it until you get about 50, 60, 70% through. And then they can redo the working capital line, renew the working capital line, and hopefully get you more funds and better terms. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. What other questions do you have on working capital?
Working capital, is it also known as other names that might get people confused when you try to search online? Like working
Correct.
capital?
A lot of people call it a merchant cash advance. Okay. That's why it's revenue based. It's based on the sales of that business, right? And so just a couple things, right? Like any other financing program, they're going to factor in the applicant's time in business, their credit, their cash flow, and either the industry type or the profitability of the business, right? And any working capital line, let's say above 150,000, you're going to need tax returns and financials, because they do need to see, is the business making money, is it breaking even, or is it losing?
What would be some good things to use working capital, like buy inventory, buy supplies?
I'll give you. Yeah, that's a great question. Anything that's short term or anything that there's a big return on investment, right? So let's say somebody, their competitor down the street goes out of business, and they're getting everything for 20 cents on the dollar, 30 cents on the dollar. If you used it for that, and you know you're going to be able to, make an extra, 50% on what you're buying, that makes sense. Same thing with inventory. If you can turn inventory all over quickly, it makes sense. Typically, our process is working capital lines are always going to be, I don't want to say last resort, but basically last resort because of the cost. Okay, yeah. So if somebody is qualified for a line of credit, if somebody is qualified for a term loan, if they're qualified for equipment financing, that's the route that we always choose to go. However, if they need it quick, or it just for whatever reason doesn't fit any of those boxes, or an SBA loan, if it doesn't fit, that's when we would pivot over to working capital.
Okay. Yeah. So you call like you said, a business going out of business and they're selling their equipment, you get it cheaper. But you wouldn't want to use it, say, to buy equipment for your company, right? Because that's something that'd be.
You would only use it. Yeah, you would only use it for anything like that if the other options were exhausted, and that happens for whatever reason. There's nothing wrong with that. Typically, what I tell clients to do is, if this is what the options are, one, let's fix what's wrong with the business, why they weren't able to get a line of credit, why they weren't able to get an SBA, or why they weren't able to get equipment financing. Let's fix that. Sometimes it's their personal credit, sometimes it's business credit, sometimes it's time in business, sometimes it's cash flow. Whatever that reason is, let's work with our clients to fix it. And then after they take the funds, we fix it, and then we get them into a better program in the future. Now, here's the other thing, right? The biggest thing with all types of financing, whether someone should take it or not, okay? Does the increase in revenue, okay, or increase in the business cover and exceed the payment that it's going to be? Whether that's a monthly payment, however that's added up, you want the financing to be covered by the increase in revenue. Same thing with the cost. Let's say for $100,000, it's going to cost somebody $10,000. Okay. Well, if that $100,000 they make, let's say 40 or 50,000, there's still a profit or still a return on those funds. All right. That's super important to figure out, and that's for any financing. Doesn't mean for SBA, for equipment, for invoice factoring, right? It has to make sense for the individual entrepreneur. And if those things don't line up, they should not take the financing.
Okay. Another question we have is, say if you're a wholesaler and you're trying to buy some inventory, but your suppliers don't pay you until like once a month, and daily payments are not an option because you don't get income daily. There's options about monthly and weekly as well, right?
I mean, no. Right. On a working capital line, no. It's a weekly or bi-weekly, and those are rare.
Okay.
In that scenario, I would say that it's either got to be a term loan, it's got to be an SBA loan, potentially invoice financing, or project funding. Okay. So it's all the programs are tailored towards the qualifications of our clients and what they're trying to accomplish, right? Typically, when there's a lot of B2B, that's either an invoice factoring situation or a project financing situation.
No, okay.
If they wouldn't qualify for SBA, and if they wouldn't qualify for like a line of credit.
Okay. Cool. And then with this working lines of capital, it's prices are a little bit higher. Maybe fees or things might be a little higher than like a line of capital. What's the best way you could prevent getting in trouble after you get the funds, or how would you to use the money correctly?
Of course. So the best way to do it is to make sure that you're utilizing that money to increase the business, to help your business, and to make more money, right? So I'll give you a story, but probably 12 years ago, we had a client that owned a very successful restaurant. That client would come in and take $300,000 every, and I'm not kidding, that would take $300,000 every 3 to 4 months. And what we found out was, after we reviewed his bank statements. Every time he got money deposited into his account, he would go to a casino called Foxwoods and literally like just go out of control and ball out of his mind. So eventually they cut him off because it wasn't being used for the intended purpose. It wasn't being used for business. And sometimes these things aren't going to match up, right? So sometimes somebody's going to apply for financing and there's no massive return on investment. It's to fix a mistake, right? So a business had an unexpected bill. They need money quick. This could work if a line of credit doesn't. Now, as long as that mistake is not something that's going to be repeating and they've solved the problem, it was just they just need an injection of cash, that makes sense. That's when you want to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you got to fix the problem and to get it corrected, and this will help you like put a Band-Aid on it and learn from it, and instead of just like trying to constantly do the same thing over and over and just bleeding money out.
Exactly.
Okay.
What other questions do you have on these?
That was most of them right there.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, let me just recap here for you. You know, working capital lines are solid when used correctly. I've seen a client of mine literally build his business from doing $150,000 a month to like $1 million a month over the course of 6 years. And he kept going back to this program because his credit was all over the place. When he would qualify for a line of credit, we did it. When he would qualify for equipment financing, we did it. The problem is the guy was very, very nonchalant about paying his bills. Okay. So his wife I'm telling you vividly, his wife would sometimes forget to have things go on auto pay, or auto pay would be skipped. And now next thing you know, his credit dropped. So he would still have the opportunity to buy a lot more trucks and put them in his fleet, and he still made a ton of money. So he used them successfully. You know, the problem is are you using it the right way? Okay. Because with these programs, I don't ever think it's something that should be sustained, right? A client should use it successfully, and then fix what challenges are in the business. Like we go through on all of our reviews. If they fix those challenges, then they can get into a line of credit. They can get into an SBA. They can get into equipment financing. But they have to take those steps and essentially fix and make their business stronger.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, Dave, thanks for coming on. I
Thanks
appreciate you guys. And listen, if you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. Reach out to Dave. Reach out to myself. We're here to help. Otherwise, I hope you guys are off to a great start in the month. And I hope you guys are crushing it. Take care.
All right. See you guys.